Gauteng Premier David Makhura says he will leave office, but not just right away. There's been speculation he would be recalled as Premier following an ANC Provincial Executive Committee meeting, which kicked off on Friday. As things stand, the Education MEC, Panyaza Lesufi, has assumed leadership of the party, and this is following the provincial election where he rose to the position of chair. Makhura earlier confirming, saying that he will only leave office on his own terms.
So I want to say to you, I'm not here to render my resignation today, but I'm definitely ready to hand over to the next leadership of the ANC. There's a difference between recall and resignation and a handover, and this handover must be smooth, and the transition must be smooth. And it's initiated, this process was initiated at my own behest immediately after the provincial conference. This leadership hasn't come to me to demand a change, a reshuffle.
Well, he's also added he's willing to hand over the position once the ANC has decided who his successor will be.
So the day the ANC comes back and says to me, we think we have completed our process, I'll be able to hand over to the next Premier. Of course, you know, those processes the ANC goes through will go its own processes. The timing of that is entirely dependent on the party itself.
Well, for more on the story, we're joined by the Gauteng ANC Deputy Secretary, Tasneem Motara. Tasneem, good evening. Thanks for your time tonight. Why the back and forth over what must happen and what the future of the Gauteng Premier is?
Well, good evening, Kathy, and thanks for having me. I don't think it's about back and forth. I think it's just about making a determination of how a transition needs to take place. Of course, when becomes quite important as well. You would know that we've gone to a provincial conference, and because there's new leadership in place, that leadership must make a determination of what should happen in the province, whether it's a program of action of the party, program of action of government, that leadership must give direction to both.
Does it mean that there was no clarity, especially following that election, about what the future of governance in Gauteng should look like? If we take, for example, KZN, within a week of their conference, they'd already made the changes they wanted, and it's important for stability.
Look, I think we were dealing with quite a different dynamic. Of course, I wouldn't be able to speak with authority on what has happened in KZN. You would know that, for instance, our provincial conference, a highly contested one, took place over 2 sessions. We did conclude it without hindrance in the second session. I think then we needed to give the Provincial Executive Committee time to be able to make those decisions about how it wants to deal with the transition, and like I say, how it wants to deal with the program of action of the party, and how that program of action in the party translates into the program of action of government.
You call it a dynamic. Are you referencing the fact that some of the members who've ultimately ended up in the PEC are from what would be considered the opposing sides, effectively, of the different slates, and I loathe to use the word, going into that provincial election? So is it hard getting everybody to agree on what the way forward is, because there wasn't really consensus, even amongst the PEC, on who the chair should be?
Well, it wasn't up to the PEC to
fair enough,
yes.
But I think you get the point I'm making.
So definitely, I think, like we say, it was a very contested conference, and unlike others. All conferences in the previous past have been contested. And we just need to give the PEC time, which it has done now, to make that determination on how it wants to take the process forward. There was no ambiguity in our meeting on Friday. The PEC was unanimous in that there has to be a transition. And then, of course, in engagements with the Premier, we've now made a determination of just how and when that will be.
My understanding is the Secretary or the Secretary's office has now been tasked with coming up with a list of 3 names, 3 that will be nominated. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so it will actually be up to the entire Provincial Executive Committee.
Okay.
So what we will be doing is now just dealing with the logistics as the Provincial Secretariat Office on convening that PEC meeting. That PEC meeting will deliberate on the type of candidate we want. Ultimately, though, that PEC make a determination on 3 names, which we recommend to the national office bearers. The national office bearers will then interview the 3 candidates and then make a final decision, which will be communicated to the PEC.
Is the current education MEC and chair of your party in the province, Panyaza Lesufi, a front runner in that conversation, you would say?
I think any member of the ANC in good standing stands a chance as
no,
a front runner.
Tasneem, you're being so diplomatic.
No, I'm not. We've not had a discussion as a PEC. Of course, that's where even myself, I'll be able to express my view.
Previously, the question of those who are of the individual who occupies the position of chair in the province has almost automatically become premier.
No, there's nothing automatic, I think, in the ANC. If you recall, Kathy, when Premier Makhura ascended to become the Premier of the province, he was not yet the chairperson of the province. We had the Premier, Nomvula Mokonyane, as the Premier of the province. She was not the chairperson of the province. So it's not a given and it's not automatic. What we are dealing with is the fact that the Premier made his intentions quite clear, even before the provincial conference, that one, he'd not be standing for position in the provincial executive. Post the conference, he's now made it quite clear that there needs to be a transition and we must be able to effect that change.
There have been reports about the fact that the Gauteng ANC did not want to make any decisions about whether there should be changes until Premier Makhura had another position secured within the national government.
Well, I think a securing, as you put it, of a position in the national government is not up to the provincial executive. Of course, we would have had conversations with the national office bearers and the national leadership on many dynamics, many outcomes, many possibilities that could be engaged on. Of course, if you use the example of KZN, the former premier is now an MEC in the executive. Premier Makhura has made an indication that he's not available to serve in the province. Of course, we like to say that there's no dustbin that the ANC throws its members into. So we do need to make a determination as an organization of what leadership role we give to leaders of the organization.
So what are the conversations then that you've been having with the national arm of the party? Is it a case of, look, you see what's happening, help us out because we don't have a dustbin for our own?
No, I think, like I said, he's come to us to indicate that he's ready to hand over. And we've had to, of course, engage with the national leadership to say that this change is inevitable. We'll have to then undergo
Who is the national leadership?
The national office bearers in this instance. And then, of course, that change, because that change is inevitable, it then kicks in the ANC process. As I've outlined, it's the provincial executive that will meet, make a determination of 3 names that we recommend to the national office bearers. Those 3 will be interviewed. Ultimately, the national office bearers will give us an indication of their ultimate decision. So that's a normal process that we've always undergone. We did it with the mayors, with the metro mayors. So it's not a new process. Of course, though, we've got to ready the national office bearers, including the provincial executive, to be able to say that this is an inevitability. We've got to prepare for it, and let's prepare adequately.
The one thing that residents of Gauteng would want, though, is certainty about how long this process is going to take and when exactly we can expect these changes.
I think we're not going to prolong them extensively. I think if you heard the Premier today, he is representing provincial government still in international business for the next 2 weeks. Concurrently, we would be kicking off the internal processes, and surely not within the very far future, we will be able to conclude the process.
Within the next month, would you say?
Give or take.
All right. Before I let you go, how is the PEC functioning, given just how difficult it was to actually get to a final result of what this PEC would look like? Very
well, in fact, very dynamic. Many of us have served together either in various structures before being in the PEC, either in the Youth League. Majority of the current PEC does come from the ranks of the ANC Youth League in the province, in our various regions. Many of us served in the 13th PEC that went to a conference 2-3 months ago. But very dynamic, very robust, very frank. We've got a lot of ideas, a lot of energy. and a lot to prove. And I think we will do exactly that.
How much of a consideration is 2024 in terms of the candidates you'll be picking?
Of course,
to take over the post?
That's one of the biggest considerations. Of course, we don't only do this process for the sake of the ANC, but we do this process for the sake of citizens, for the stability, as you put it, the stability of government, the stability of the ANC. So amongst many considerations would definitely be 2024, but a big consideration would be ensuring that the party's program of action is carried through in the party, in government.
You currently serve within the provincial cabinet as an MEC. Will your name be in the ring? Is it on the list?
You can lobby for me. We'll make that determination when we meet.
Are you open for it, though?
I think any member must be open to anything in the ANC.
That's about as ANC an answer as it gets.
Definitely.
Tasneem Motara, the Deputy Secretary of the ANC in Gauteng.